So in this video, I'm going to show you what the population analysis report can do and how you can use it to better understand the kind of opponents that you're facing at your specific poker site. So that report is located here at the end. And the cool thing about this report is it's going to take all of the data that exists in your database. It's going to break down the stats based on different player type HUD profiles that are set in your HUD, and it'll take any stat that you want and give you what the average is for that kind of player type. So, nit, fish, standard reg, tight reg, bad leg, etc. Um, if you want to know better what qualifies these players as these types, you can go into your HUD and take a look at your player type profile here. And as you can see, nit is highlighted. So for this particular categorization, it's VPIP, preflop raise, and 3-bet. And this is these player types are fit into exact standard. So if a stat does not fit into all three of these categories, it will not quantify and categorize the player as a nit. It will also the report will also take all of the data and show you what an overall average is for every single hand that you've ever played, as far as the opponents that you faced. And it'll show this data at the end here in all players. But then it'll show you a breakdown based on category types. But like I was trying to point out, if it doesn't fit exactly in there, it won't count for this kind of player type for a fish or whatever. So it has very exacting standards. So the cool thing about this report is, again, you can look at and kind of confirm some of your ideas about how to play against certain players. So how often do nits fold to C bets? We know that they're likely, intuitively, going to fold much higher than other players, which we see here. Fold to 3 bets. Any of these kinds of stats you want to add, and you can just right click on the column header if there's a particular stat that you want to see for all the players, and then you can just click and add them. And you can't see all the stats here, that's cut off in this video, but you just click and you add, and then you can generate the report, and then you can get an idea and analyze all the different players on specific areas. Now, the really cool part about this report comes in analyzing certain situations. So I'll do an example, really easy situation. Add a filter where we just have an ace-high flop. So high card of ace, I'll add this. Super simple. Now it's going to rebuild the report, but it's going to apply this filter. So we're going to look at all of the same data, but it's only going to apply when there's an ace-high flop. So we're going to see how all the different players react to ace-high flop. So then we can add stats like how often are they folding on the flop, how often are they folding to double barrels, how often are certain players check raising, and so on. All right, just pause that for a quick second so I could finish loading. And so now we have that filter. I'm going to expand our screen space here. But so now we have a filter that's just looking at all ace-high flops, and you can see some of the hands here. So now we can look at, again, how often are nits folding on ace-high flops, bad lags, which might be kind of surprising. They're folding on ace-high flops. Well, I guess actually not super surprising, because they're going to have a much wider range in their hands, and they're going to typically expect you to have a more ace-high or Broadway hand range. And this is kind of telling and not super surprising, but tricky lags, who are much better lags, are only folding half of the time. So these are the lags that actually tend to make money, versus the bad lags that are just playing a lot of hands and playing aggressive, but they're playing stupid, and you should tend to win money off of them. So you can look at how often they check raise a flop C bet, and you can see tricky lags are in the lead there with tight regs, and fish, as suspected, 4.4% of the time. Um, Nits a good percentage of the time too, and this is likely because they tend to kind of play in some unorthodox manners, or they are hoping that they can surprise people when they have big hands. But um, unsurprisingly, fish nearly never, and so we know if a fish check raises on that flop, we should be folding. Now, this is stuff we probably know. I'm using a very simplistic example here, but there are a ton of different areas. Just think of any kind of filter you can create for a situation. um, let's say there's a very specific board on the flop, and then a scare card comes on the turn. How are these different player types reacting? So you can take all this data and analyze it and break it down and get a much better idea, and you can compare it to other sites that you're playing at. So if you're playing on Ignition, Bet Online, America's Card Room, PokerStars, wherever it is, you can see if your overall player population is reacting differently based on these different filters and stats that you look at. So you can see there's a lot of power in kind of getting an idea, and some of this might be somewhat intuitive, but it's also good to get good data behind it so you know exactly. And you can add this data, or make side notes of it, so you understand that, hey, when this person does X play, this type of player, they generally have it, or a lot of times these guys don't, so maybe I can rebluff in this spot. Um, so I think this is a really awesome report, and I think um, as you add and create, customize the default report, you'll be able to get a lot of really cool data, and I'd highly recommend you share some of it too. You can share it in our forums, or other forums, and start building larger profiles with other players, and that's kind of where the power comes in when you start sharing a lot of this data. So hope you enjoy, and good luck with your game.